Welcome back to the Natural Capital Plant Database. We're back at the entry page, the index page for the database website, and we're going to check out some features and some different pages. If you click on the Enter icon, it will take you to the introduction page. This explains a little bit about the Natural Capital Database, what we're supplying with it, a little bit about the founders and the partners in the database and some of our sources. Also in the left column you'll find some resource information, the introduction page, which we are on right now, a news page, and we have different events and updates from that. There's actually a little bit of history of the website on there. The subscription page, which gives our costs and access to the site. Again, you can see on the right the different features, and then also the download, spreadsheet download that's available to the Advanced Designer level subscribers. We're doing research as much as possible on all the plants that we put in. We want to make sure that the database information has very high integrity and also is usable and focused on human uses and ecological functions so that we can build resilient plant communities. So the research information is there. We're building a glossary at this time. It's not up on the website, but we're hoping to share all the terms in building an edible forest garden, ecological systems, and polycultures. So if there's a word or something that looks foreign to you, you can go there and look it up. Also, resources and useful links for people interested in building ecological systems. There's a huge amount of information there, especially from educational institutions, and we try to put much of that on there. Some of our favorite ones are at the top with the USDA, the University of Minnesota, and Cornell University. As we can, we're going to add more and more of polyculture plant designs to give you examples of how these plants are laid out once you build your list. Most of these are done in Adobe Illustrator, but they can also be put together in most any software package that you might have for landscape design or graphic design. We always use vector programs, not Photoshop, which works in raster, but vector images so that they're clean lines and very small files, and also editable and magnifiable to almost any range. If you come to a point where you'd like to contact us, you just click on that, and of course then the window will open for sending an email to the managers of the site. So we'll head back out to the front page, and then when you try, it's time for you to log in, or you can do this at any time, of course. If you have a general login, you can make a bookmark for this page, and that's where you will enter the site. On the login page, there's other information. Again, we have the introduction page, which talks about the database, the new subscription, actually all those things I just talked about, actually, seeing that on there. So we'll go back to the login page and log in, so that will change as soon as you log in. That left column changes and you have different choices. Putting in your email address or your username and your password. Those two things are assigned to you by us. We assign you a password, and usually your email address is used for access. We don't use uncommon or creative usernames. Only email names can be used on that, and then we supply also the password for getting on the site. That is for tracking usability and tracking frequency of visits, so that we can do some studies on where people are going and what plants they're looking at, and track that, and also when we need to correspond with our subscribers. So we're logged in now, and what you'll see on the left again are those the different information on the left from the reg site, but here is the plant database itself. There are different levels of access in the plant database. For the partner level, and we have documentation spaces for also more detailed instruction in managing the plant database. The designer level and the access level, public level, is the plant database itself. And then for our advanced designers, we also have a data entry site where we're asking our advanced designers to help us build the plant database. Right now there are 1,400 plants in the database for temperate climate polyculture design, and we would like to expand that even in our own climate, in our own region, but also as we expand into other regions, we want to build up the access to these plants so that we can have the integrity and the depth and breadth of plant selection available. Plant review is for our editors on the editing level, and once plants are submitted by the subscribers and our researchers. It's reviewed by our upper echelon designers, and making sure on a multiple level that all the plants are in and they're sited, and we have a very high integrity of plant selection. So going into the plant database, the left column changes again, and this is basically the nuts and bolts of the database page right here. It is rather simple. It's not fancy at all. We want you to have as little fatigue as possible using it and access to the information as soon as possible. The left column and the right column are fairly equal in what they offer, so we'll just go through that. You are logged in now, and you are in the database access area. Again, you can go into the introduction area and find out a little bit more about the plant database, how it works, how to use the database, the different types of plant characteristics that you are looking for, the Cultivated Polyculture Guilds, Natural Plants Associates, and then a little bit about our ongoing support and the people that help us maintain the plant database. Plant selection is the first tool page that you can use, and this is all the plants that we have in the database in alphabetical order by plant name, common name. Also, you'll see the scientific name and the plant type. If you'd like to search for any kind of plant by common name, just type in the upper left corner, and by scientific name in the scientific entry block right there. It's fairly easy to use the plant selection tool. You just have to type in any character string that you have that you can remember. You don't even have to put the full list in there, and then all of the plants that use that word in the plant name will show up. One note is that because there are just hundreds and hundreds of cultivars of any one type of plant, summer squash, winter squash, many times we use the genus and the species for that, and we try to keep that to a minimum. Many of the plants' ecological functions, their size and their characteristics change a little bit, but most of the time how they react in the environment is not that different. When it does vary quite a bit, we will add different plants to that. So we have summer squash and winter squash that show up in a squash search. If you click on any one of those, that will open up to the detail page for that particular plant. This is summer squash, cucurbit, and you can see it gives us the family name, the plant type. It's an annual, it's a herbaceous plant, and then we have the first block is characteristics of the plant itself: height, spread, growth rate, lifespan, stand, preference, and these are basically more in the general landscape characteristics that people are looking for visually. If they're a vine form, and these are, or it might be columnar, it might be round, pyramidal form, what shape it is, what texture it might be. Now with these plants, we don't really have a texture in for garden plants, but most of the other trees and shrubs will have some kind of texture, being it coarse, fine, or medium. The type of sun that these plants require is always in the list. This is a full sun, partial shade. This is the tolerance, and then also the requirements that the plant might have. Also what soil types it grows in, and the moisture regime that it needs to stay healthy. Root information is also on the top. How deep in the ground does it go? What type and shape of root it has. And on most of the plants, they will be a fungal, bacterial ratio and fungal types. Now these are for the mycorrhizal and mycorrhizae and the fungi relationships in the soil with the plants. Since the plant itself has many associates in the soil, we try to list those also. Seasonal interests, seasonal notes, that is information about the plant itself in different times of the year, things to think about, fruit type, and the flower color. The next box down is the tolerances of the plant, hardiness zones, pH, if it's drought tolerant, flood tolerant, salt tolerant, those kinds of things. Any kind of effects from compaction or mowing. And then on the far right side, you'll see fire, cold injury, storm damage, and then disease susceptibility to insects and animals. You'll see on the right there under animals, this is susceptible to deer. So if there's an animal listed, that's an animal that may be have some herbivory effect or predating on the plant itself. Next box down is the behaviors, the grow season, bloom time. Should use my cursor here. And when it will bloom, of course, this is seasonal, and this depends upon where you live, where you plant it, and what your degree days are, and what your sunlight, and when spring comes in your area, and also fruiting time. We try as much as possible to list all the human uses of the plants here, and basically, of course, squash is a food, and there are many things that can be eaten in the squash in ways that it can be prepared. And then lastly on the bottom are plant compatibles and incompatibles. If there are plants that are companion plants for, say in this case, squash, these are the plants that would be good to plant around that for benefits, ecological benefits of that. As you can see here, here is one of the no's. Squash is said to harm potatoes, and as opposed to pole beans, nasturtiums, and other plants that actually work with the potato or do not compete with the potato, or excuse me, with the squash. The potato competes with the squash and is said to harm that. Most of the time over here on the right we'll also have a citation and a reference for these things. Sometimes this information just comes from broader lists that we have, or experience, or cultural knowledge. So that is the detail page. Now when you have different plants, this detail page will have more and more detail, and also other windows will open up of information that is helpful to have, and we'll see that as we go along. So let's click on the next choice in the left column, and that's searching for plants by characteristics. This again is one of the main tools that people will use, and this is used by finding out where you're growing, what you're growing, and then what you would like to grow on that particular ecological condition. If you know the family type of plants that are already growing in the niche or in that local area, you can actually search by type, or excuse me, family, and then those families, those plants within that family will also then show up on your page. Searching by plant type, this is to keep your list down to the actual thing that you're looking for. If you're looking for, say, a deciduous tree, you would click on deciduous tree. What zone you're in, 3, 4, up to 7, 8, all the zones are on here, and these are USDA zones. That would be different if you were in Canada or in other parts of the world, so you'd want to coordinate the zone here, which is a USDA zone for the United States, to the zone that you have, and use the numbers from the USDA here. So we'll say we're in zone 4. You also can put your soil pH if you'd like to, high pH, low pH. If you have a neutral pH, we'll just put in 7, which would be neutral here. Now the height and spread area is used for spaces that you're trying to fit the plant into. So if it's near power lines, if it's near other trees, buildings, or if you're not putting in a tree and basically you're putting in a shrub, you might want to make sure that the plant will fit and not grow past the bottom of a window, or it might not go above a fence line, or if you have reasons for the plant being a certain height, you can put that limitation in here also. Spread is the same situation. If you're trying to get a plant that fits an area laterally and will only grow to a certain width, you can put that width in here, and all the plants that grow up to that range will be listed in the final list when you search for plants. As it says here, woody plants are in feet and all others are in inches. So trees and shrubs, woody plants are listed in spread and height in feet, and then all other perennials, garden plants, flowers and such things are in inches. In the database there is only numbers and there are no designations for inches or feet. You just need to keep that in mind. The next box down is the ecological functions. And again, when we're trying to build these plants together, we're looking for plants that will help each other, that will increase our natural capital in the soil, increase fertility, increase organic material and nutrients. And so plants have all sorts of different types of characteristics and ecological functions, so we list those here. If we're looking for a deciduous tree that's a nitrogen fixer, we would just click that box for nitrogen fixer and continue in our search. Be advised that the more choices you make in searching for a plant and the more things you're demanding in the parameters, the fewer plants you'll get, because the plant that will result must have everything that you click. So if you want a broader list, you would not click too many boxes and you would keep that to a minimum. Ecological functions are very important in our polyculture designs, and that is something that is instructed in our workshops in building polycultures. Human uses then. Here in the ecological functions we have for building the plant community and the environmental conditions we're trying to improve or enhance. but we also want to have a harvest for human use. So listed in human uses are most all of the possibilities that we can think of and that we've found in harvests from our ecological designs and our plant production areas. Everything, of course, from food to we have increased biomass for compost, coppicing, which is a way of trimming trees, much as pollarding if you're looking for soap, wood, medicines, oil, and wax, fiber, those such things. You would click on the box of things that the type of harvest you'd like to get with that. Now, of course, if you click on food and medicine, there are only a few plants that do that same thing, although you might consider food to be medicine. But if you're looking for food and cut flowers, you would only get cut flowers that are edible. So keeping this also to a minimum will help increase the number of plants that you have in your selection. More site-specific information, sun requirements. Now this is the space that you have. If you have full sun, that you would put in plants at like full sun. Now in this case, if a plant is tolerant of shade, partial shade, or full sun, it will be selected for all three, and so anything that you click will show that plant up. Other plants require full sun and they can't handle part shade. So if you want plants that only have full sun, those plants will show up if it's just an area that is full sun, and there are some plants that need to be in shade. You want to make sure that you are selecting for the area that you're working in and the sun that is available there. Down below is your soil type. Perhaps you are in sandy soil, loamy soil, silty soil, or clay, wet. Many plants will grow in many different types of soils or a combination of soils. So you could click on sandy, or you could click on loamy or clay. Or if you have silty clay or sandy loam or whatever that might be, you would click on those and plants would show up. Either way, you want to make sure that the plant that you get is suited to the soil that you have. Be advised, in the outputs and downloads of spreadsheets of the plant database results, soil types do not show up on that spreadsheet list. So you want to keep track of all your selections in your search parameters to make sure that when you have your final selection, your final list, that you know what you were actually searching for. That information is not output at this time on the spreadsheet or anywhere on the page. So make a note of what the parameters are that you entered. And so when you have your search report, you can make a note on that to what the parameters were that you put in. Again, over on the right here are tolerances. What can the plant tolerate? Can it tolerate drought, flood, and salt? Salt is from if it's near a road, or especially in the northern climates where they use salt on the roads, and that splashes in on the grass within usually the 5 to 8 feet past the curb or past the road. We want to make sure that those plants are salt tolerant, so that's why that area is there. Animal resistance, if you have a deer issue, a rabbit issue, gophers and mice and such, you're looking for specific plants that will resist herbivory by those animals, you can select on there. Keeping in mind, of course, as you select and more parameters you put down, the fewer and shorter your list is, but you want to make sure that you're only getting plants that are suited to your area. If you're looking for a certain type of root, that is listed also. And this, of course, when we are partitioning the resources underground, we want to plant plants close together. But in that case, they must have different types of roots and root shapes so that they partition the soil well. You might have tap roots, which are long and slender, going deep into the soil, and then alongside of those have fibrous, shallow roots that are using different strata of the soil and taking in different nutrients. And then you can plant them closer, and they will not compete with each other. Growth rate can be important for some people. If you're building a screen, if you're building a windbreak, perhaps you're looking for fast-growing trees, you would put a different growth rate in there for whatever purposes you have. So in this case now, we have filled out the search characteristics here. We're looking for a deciduous tree in zone 4 with a pH of 7. We didn't put in any ecological functions, but we will get a list anyway of all of them for the selection that we have. We're looking for a deciduous tree that's edible, that can tolerate or needs full sun in clay soils. Down at the bottom here of the page, you'll see Submit Query, and when we print that button, we get the resulting list of plants. These are all the plants that we just requested in clay soils in full sun. I think it was zone 3. and deciduous trees. So as you can see in the plant type, these are all deciduous trees. And again, you can click on any one of these trees and you'll get the detail for that. So if you're looking at the Honeycrisp apple tree, again, you get that plant detail page with all the information about that plant. You have the plant detail, the name, scientific name, the type of plant it is, all of the, again, plant characteristics, and then also the tolerances that it has, the zone range it can live in, the pH that it will tolerate, and the tolerances it does have. As you can see here, the Honeycrisp is not tolerant to flood or salt, but it is moderately drought tolerant. And going down the page here, also human uses, basically food is what it is seen for, and then any kind of plant concerns will always show up at the bottom of the page of any report that you have. If any plant that you click on has some concerns, they will show up at the bottom, and that's a good thing to know, because some of these things should not be used as forage in silvopasturing or foraging crops, or the fact that it may be needed to be treated in a certain way for any kind of toxicological effects. Now, these effects may or may not affect humans. They may be specific to an animal, specific animal, or a group of animals. In this case, with the apple, the leaves and seeds are cyanogenetic and have very toxic effects. And this is just a note about the plant, so that if you're cutting down branches, you probably might want to think twice about feeding it to goats or any livestock. At any time, we can back up in this page and go back to the list. I'm just looking for my here we go. Go back to our list here and look at these, and just going down for information about these plants. Now, knowing that we have our search and the search is done, if you wanted to go look in cultivated polycultures, many of these are not populated at this time, but we continue to do that. Then any one of these trees may have a cultivated polyculture already designed that you can use as a foundation, or at least to research what types of plants grow well with that. Also, if any of these plants here, if you're saying a chokecherry or elderberry, box elder, those kind of plants that are naturally growing, there also may be some natural plant associates that appear with that plant in nature. So the human cultivated polycultures are the natural plant associates. Now, this is the greatest part of our plant database that we have for our designers, and that is way at the bottom left corner. There is the export data to spreadsheet. All of these plants will be collected and put in a download, and you can take that and bring it into Excel or spreadsheet software and manage your database. So we're going to click on export data to spreadsheet. It's exported. At the top, you click on it, and immediately that will open up into Excel. And now all the plants that you had on your list are in an Excel spreadsheet ready for you to format and modify and sort. You can sort all these plants by their height and their spread, so that you can kind of have a, the narrower ones on top and the wider ones at the bottom. You can also sort by hardiness zone or soil tolerance, sorting in many ways, just like you can do in any Excel spreadsheet. All the common names are listed, all the scientific names, and you might even want to sort that alphabetically. Now, what I would suggest as you're working in the plant database is that you do a number of searches in the plant database and collect a number of these lists and export them as plant types. So you do all the deciduous trees you're looking for first, then the deciduous shrubs, then the perennials, any kind of flowers or annuals. So you have these in separate lists. You only do searches by plant type so that the list isn't too long and they're specific to those types of plants in your ecological condition that you're working with. Then once you've exported those to Excel, combine those cutting and pasting into your final plant list in Excel. Once your plant list is in Excel, you have all the information that's on the plant database in that Excel spreadsheet except for the soil type. And many of these plants have a lot of different soil types that they will work with, but that is the one item that does not show up in the plant spreadsheet, and that's for our own integrity of the website. So keep track of your soil types, and of course you would want to use those. And although it may change across your landscape to some degree, keep track of what soil type you're working with each list. So that's the searching for plant characteristics feature of the plant database. Cultivated polycultures are lists of plants that we have found or put together that are being used, and it's much like pre-searching or things that have already been used, plant groups that have already been put together. We'll look at this apple orchard guild that's already been devised, and here you see the list of the plants, their scientific name, all their ecological functions that are used within the polyculture, and then the human uses that come from that polyculture from those plants. This is also a very useful tool when you're just beginning to build polycultures to see what kind of plants can be put together and what their human uses are. What we're trying to devise are plant polycultures that have as many ecological functions as possible to be redundant and have multiple functions within our plant systems, but also as many human uses as possible in the smallest amount of space. So that's what a polyculture really does, is it fills in small spaces with huge amounts of diversity and plants, and so that increases our harvest in aggregate of all the different types of things over time and over space, what we can get from our polyculture spaces in our production areas. So that's one of our combined cultivated polyculture spaces. You can see it also has the zone that it's worked in and its ecological requirements. This is a cultivated apple orchard guild for loamy soil, silty soil, so it's silty loam. In partial shade, some of the plants will be under the tree, and full sun, some of the plants will be out in full sun. And when you download the export spreadsheet function, that will be listed, and that will help you place the plants. Some of them will be in the understory, and others will be out in full sun within this area in the apple orchard guild. This also helps you correct for the amount of plants that you'll use. Notice that there's only one plant here, but when you bring the list down and you start filling spaces, of course you'll probably have more than one daffodil, and you'll probably have a lot of daffodils, but you might only have 3 or 4 currants, of course, and this is all depending on the space you have as you build your polyculture. But the apple tree being our anchor plant, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 9, maybe 12, but of course relative to the number of apple trees, it also increases the number of supporting plants underneath it. As an example, for every apple tree you might have 3 to 5 comfrey. For every apple tree you might have a dozen to 20 daffodils surrounding it for the ecological functions there. You might have an understory of red currants, and then every tree that might be only 2 or 3 or running across a border. Many ways of putting this together, but the design comes in placing and counting and moving the plants around to fill the space efficiently to partition the sun and the soil. You can also search for cultivated polycultures by polyculture type, and those are agricultural, environmental, restoration, sustainable landscape, and wildlife types of polycultures. This again is something that we're working with the type. So if you have an agricultural polycultures that you're looking for in zone 3, you can do a search for polycultures with those characteristics, agricultural in zone 3. And it's thinking, and here they come. And that has the functions and uses and the lists of the plants. Names that we have, you can see a few here. These are for zone 3. Here's our apple orchard that we saw. Here's a spring soil builder mix when we're trying to build the soil with nitrogen and organic material, something you might want to think of. Also, hoop house greens, extra hardy. Hoop house greens, hardy. This is a perennial guild. So these are plants that keep coming back in a hoop house that are harvestable multiple times. Here's a Japanese stone pine guild with a pine tree, hedgerow, orchard vineyard guild, peach tree guild, and such. Again, clicking on any one of those and it would list the plants just like we have found. That comes from this search, and again you want to put in your ecological requirements of your space, your niche description, so to speak, what type of sun you're working with and what kind of soil, and all of those polycultures that we've devised and found will come together. Also, there's the natural plant associates, and these are the groups of plants that come together in nature, and there's great descriptions, great grouping of plants, and many of these are basically just forage plants or prairie plants that come together in combinations. And these could be considered polycultures, but they're natural polycultures. These are naturally occurring in nature. The sources for these are from the Department of Natural Resources and other cited state and federal agencies where they have done surveys of the forests and commonly found certain plants that usually grow together. Again, you can look through these natural plant associates if you have a certain area that has aspen or bur oak or some type of plant, and in the natural plant associates, the most common plants that grow with that, understory and such, will appear in those lists. We also have a list of plant compatibles and incompatibles. You can search through alphabet here looking for a particular plant, and like say garlic, you'll find the other plants that are or are not compatible with growing that, and many times the reason why. For in this case, beans of such, most of the pole bean, faba beans, bush beans, all the beans here slow the growth. Garlic slows the growth of the beans, so you wouldn't want to have garlic with the beans or close by. These are the notes for that, why it is that way, and also you'll see the citations here where we've got that information. The compatibles and incompatibles list is kind of an interesting side to go to and look and kind of learn what families of plants grow together and others don't. There is a definite pattern to this. So learning about the brassicas, learning about the nightshades, and why they will not grow together and what effect they have on each other is very handy, so that you're not wasting time and space by planting plants that will compete with each other. Again, if you would like to get a hold of us, there's the contact on the bottom that takes you directly to an email. Your email window will open up, and you can send us your questions that you might have about the database. So that's the Natural Capital Plant Database. I hope you enjoyed this tour. And again, if you have questions, you can email us, and we look forward to your responses and any comments you might have. We're always looking for feedback on the plant database. Keep in mind that this is a living tool database. It's driven by the quality of the input and the quantity of the input from our researchers and our designers. We try to take every inquiry very seriously, and we're trying to give you the best possible experience and the best type of information on our database. Noting, as it says here on the introduction page, you will not find photographs of plants or images. You can always find those on the internet, because most of these plants look different depending upon where they're planted. Their size and shape, their speed of growth, their amount of harvest, what kind of fruit you'll get, the leaf structure, all those things will change, because that is a very site-specific influence of the conditions in which the plant is placed. Thank you for taking this tour with me through the plant database. My name is Dan Halsey, and for Paula Westmoreland, we welcome you and hope that you will enjoy this use, and it will help you in designing and placing your polycultures for a healthy harvest. Thank you very much.